Have you ever woken up and been told you held an entire conversation in the middle of the night, one you have absolutely no memory of? Or maybe you've been the one lying awake, listening, as a voice just sort of emerges from the darkness. This phenomenon, this kind of ghost in our biology, is one of sleep's most common and, honestly, most intriguing mysteries. So, what is really going on when our sleeping selves decide to speak? Let's unravel this.
In this explainer, we're going to journey deep into the science of sleep talking. We'll start by defining what it is, then explore the strange neurological glitch that actually causes it. From there, we'll uncover its surprising genetic links, look at what triggers it, and finally, we'll separate the hard scientific facts from some pretty popular fiction.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. What exactly is this voice in the dark? Well, it's a behavior that's so common it feels familiar to almost all of us, yet from a scientific standpoint, it's still one of the more mysterious parts of our sleeping lives.
This is the big question, isn't it? For centuries, it's been a source of everything from amusement to confusion, and sometimes even a little bit of fear. Why on earth does our brain, when it's supposed to be in a state of rest, suddenly activate the incredibly complex machinery of speech? Well, the answer takes us on a fascinating journey right into the sleeping mind.
Okay, so to really understand this, we need to use the right language. The official medical term for sleep talking is somniloquy. Now, this can be anything from just simple sounds and whispers to full-blown complex sentences, but the two defining features are always the same: a complete lack of conscious awareness during the event and absolutely no memory of it when you wake up. The conscious you is completely offline.
Somniloquy itself belongs to a bigger family of sleep behaviors, and this family is called the parasomnias. You can think of this as an umbrella term that covers all the weird and unusual things our bodies might do while our minds are asleep. We're talking about things like sleepwalking, night terrors, even physically acting out our dreams. They're all considered these abnormal little intrusions of wakeful behaviors into the sleep state.
Now, you might be really surprised to learn just how common this is. Some incredible research has shown that about 66% of us, yeah, that's 2/3 of the entire population, will talk in our sleep at some point in our lives. It's especially common in childhood. It affects about half of all kids, but it hangs around regularly for about 5% of adults. So if this happens to you, you are in very, very good company.
So if our conscious mind is totally switched off, how is speech even possible? This question brings us to the neurobiology, to what is actually happening inside our brains. And honestly, the best way to think about it is as a temporary and usually totally harmless glitch in the system.
This quote from a sleep expert really sums up the core idea perfectly. See, sleep isn't like a simple on-off switch for the whole brain at once. It's a really complex, gradual transition. And sometimes, not all parts of the brain get the memo at the same time. And speech, which is a classic wakeful activity, somehow manages to slip through the cracks.
The scientific term for this glitch is state dissociation, and this is the crucial concept to understand. I want you to imagine your brain as a city at night. During sleep, most of the city's districts are powered down for rest and repair. But in state dissociation, the lights in the speech production district suddenly flicker on, while the consciousness and memory districts stay completely dark. This mixed-up state is the fundamental reason that parasomnias like sleep talking can even happen.
Now, what we actually say in our sleep often depends on when it happens during the sleep cycle. Early in the night, when we're in our deepest, non-REM sleep, our brain is the most suppressed, so any speech that breaks through here is usually just simple mumbling, maybe some groans, or total gibberish. But later in the night, during REM sleep, that's when our most vivid, story-like dreams happen. The speech can become way more complex, more emotional, and can sound like actual dialogue pulled straight out of a dream.
This whole process reveals a really fascinating disconnect in the brain. During an episode of sleep talking, the brain's speech centers, which are in the frontal and temporal lobes, they fire up. But the prefrontal cortex, think of it as your brain's CEO, the part in charge of logic, decision-making, and stopping you from saying exactly what you think in a meeting, that part stays soundly asleep. Without that executive control, without that social filter, just raw, unfiltered speech can emerge.
Okay, so we know it's a neurological glitch. But why do some people's brains glitch so much more than others? Well, it turns out the answer might actually be written in our DNA. We're now seeing really strong evidence that there could be an inherited blueprint for these nighttime behaviors. So the first big clues came from studying twins. Research has shown again and again that identical twins who share 100% of their DNA have these remarkably similar sleep patterns, or what scientists call hypnograms. They also have a much higher chance of both experiencing things like sleep talking compared to fraternal twins, and that provides some powerful evidence for a really strong genetic influence.
This inheritance pattern gets even clearer when you actually look at the data. So check this out. This chart shows the risk for sleepwalking, which is a very closely related parasomnia. If neither parent sleepwalks, a kid has about a 22% chance of doing it. But if just one parent is a sleepwalker, that risk more than doubles to 45%. And if both parents do it, the risk just skyrockets. We see the exact same hereditary pattern in sleep talking. It clearly runs in families.
The major breakthrough in finding a specific genetic link came from a single large family. Researchers were able to study 4 whole generations of this one family where sleepwalking was incredibly common. It was passed down almost like a family heirloom. This unique family tree gave them the perfect map to hunt for the specific gene that was responsible.
And by analyzing this family's DNA, scientists figured out the inheritance pattern. It's called autosomal dominant. In simple terms, this means you only need to inherit one copy of the gene variant from just one parent to have a predisposition for the trait. And since it's autosomal, it's not on the sex chromosomes, so it affects males and females pretty much equally.
But here's where biology throws in a fascinating little twist. Not everyone in the family who had the gene actually sleepwalked. This is explained by a concept called reduced penetrance. All it means is that just having the gene doesn't guarantee you'll express the trait. Other factors, either genetic or, as we'll see in a minute, environmental, have to be in play to kind of activate it.
And the result of that landmark study was a massive step forward for sleep science. Researchers were able to pinpoint the location, or the locus, of this parasomnia-linked gene to a very specific spot on chromosome 20. Finding this genetic address was the first major step toward identifying the specific genes that build the blueprint for these strange and fascinating nighttime behaviors.
So, if just having the gene doesn't guarantee you'll talk in your sleep, what does? Well, this brings us to the triggers. The factors that can actually flip that genetic switch and make an episode much more likely to happen.
The most common triggers are usually things that disrupt or destabilize our sleep. High levels of stress and anxiety are huge culprits. Being sleep-deprived is another big one. An overtired brain is a glitchy brain. Things like alcohol, certain medications, and even just having a fever can all fragment our sleep patterns and make an episode of sleep talking far more likely, especially in someone who's already genetically predisposed.
And here's another thing. Sleep talking very rarely travels alone. It often shows up alongside other parasomnias. It's frequently linked with sleepwalking and night terrors, which also come from that same state of partial arousal from sleep. It can also be associated with something called REM sleep behavior disorder, where people physically act out their dreams. This overlap suggests they all share a common underlying vulnerability, likely rooted in those very same genetic factors.
And that brings us to our final section, where we're going to tackle the biggest myth of all about sleep talking, and then recap what science can actually tell us about the meaning behind these midnight messages. This is the one. This is the question everybody wants an answer to. Popular culture absolutely loves the idea that sleep talk is this unfiltered window into our soul, a moment when our deepest, most honest thoughts just slip out. But is there any scientific truth to this at all? The scientific verdict is a very firm no. Remember that neurological disconnect we talked about? The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for truth, lies, logic, consequences, is offline. It's asleep. Without that executive control, the words that come out are much more like random neural noise than a reliable confession. They can be fragments of a memory, little bits of dream dialogue, or just total nonsense. It's not a reliable source of information. So, let's just quickly recap the crucial takeaways here. First, sleep talking is caused by state dissociation, that mixed state where parts of the brain are awake while others are asleep. Second, there is a powerful genetic component that can be passed down through families, predisposing a person to this behavior. And third, for the vast majority of people, sleep talking is just a harmless neurological glitch, not some kind of magical truth serum.
And we'll end on this thought. We have really just begun to map the genetic underpinnings of our lives during sleep. And if a behavior as incredibly complex as speech can be influenced by our DNA, it leads to a pretty profound question. What other mysteries of our dreams, our memories, and our unconscious selves are encoded in our genes, just waiting for science to discover them?